What's good, soul family? Today I've been guided to talk about another excerpt of vulnerability. And in today's session, we're going to talk about how vulnerability is a superpower and how it really closely ties into being authentic and being your true self. It's also tied into your integrity. So when we're not able to be vulnerable, when we feel like us being vulnerable is going to lead to getting hurt, or we fear vulnerability in some way, we fear intimacy, we fear being able to open up to others, then we tend to do these things where we beat around the bush about things and we're very indirect. And I think that as human beings, if we're being indirect, it's usually because we're afraid to open up about something, we're afraid to be judged, we're afraid of how other people are going to perceive what we have said or how we think or how we perceive life. And it's all coming and stemming from a tribal wound where we feel like we're not going to fit in, or we won't be good enough, or we're not worthy or deserving to be loved exactly as we are. A lot of people base their sense of self-worth and self-esteem on what they can do for others, and usually, that's how others judge each other, is based on, what can that person do for me. And I think it's really important as a collective, as a society, that we start to reprogram this old condition, because you should feel like you can be loved exactly as you are, for who you are. You should feel safe and secure in being vulnerable and being open and honest and being authentic about how you really feel. And the reason that a lot of us don't feel safe, especially light workers, especially starseeds, is because in previous lifetimes, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, I'm going to leave that completely up to you. But it could be even in this lifetime alone, if you don't believe in reincarnation, where you may have spoken your truth, you may have said something, you may have stood up for yourself, and people may have marginalized you, people may have completely tried to shove you back down into the box, people may have tried to ridicule you, make you feel like you were less than, or that you weren't good enough. People may have tried to shut you down, made you feel bad about yourself for being your true authentic self. So, when I relate this back to previous lifetimes, I've had visions of myself where I've been executed and persecuted for speaking the truth, for standing up for something that I believed in. And so, when you carry these old wounds from so many eons and generations past, then we kind of come into this state of feeling like we're unsafe to speak our truth, because you're constantly fearing being assassinated for speaking your truth. And that's where people become, indirect and start beating around the bush about things, which then makes them tip off from their true authentic alignment, their true integrity, because they're not acting out of a space of authentic self-expression, but rather they're going around in circles to try and prove their point. And this is really dangerous in a way, because you're actually shots firing at people without just saying it how it is. And to be honest, the older I get and the more I go on my journey, the more I realize that I would rather be around people who are direct, even if it's a little bit harsh or cutthroat. I would rather know the truth. I would rather people be clear with me. Clarity is very important for me in my life. Certainty is very important for me in my life. I don't want to be surrounded by energies that are uncertain, that are going to take jabs at me from, different directions without being direct about it. I think it's very important to just say how you feel. And those who understand, those who mind don't matter, those who matter don't mind, because they understand it's just the human expression, it's your way of speaking up, it's your way of saying how you feel, and they will respect that. And they will most likely be people who can do the same thing. And it's usually those who cannot be direct about things, those who cannot be vulnerable, those who find it hard to actually step into their true authentic vulnerability, that struggle with this the most, and that usually judge and have opinions towards others the most. So I would highly recommend that, you cultivate that atmosphere within yourself. It's something that I've been working on over the last few years, and especially the last few months, of just being direct about how I feel, just saying things from a space of love, from a space of forgiveness. And if I find it hard to be in that place, if I catch myself being in a state of anger or dis-ease, or feeling a little bit off kilter about what I really want to say, then I go in and I do that healing work on myself first. I usually do the shadow work on myself first. I do what it takes to reach a state of alignment, reach a state of forgiveness, reach a state of self-love and self-acceptance within myself first before I approach the other person and tell them how I feel. And I've noticed when you can do that, when you can really take a step back and pull yourself out of the equation, and you're in the middle of this muck and you're in the middle of the mess, then you're giving yourself a chance to take your power back. You're giving yourself a chance to say, you know what, I'm going to act out of a place of authenticity. I'm going to act from a place of integrity, and I'm going to act from a place of alignment, where anything I say or do, I'm going to be direct about it, but I'm going to deliver it from a space of clarity, certainty, and a space of love and forgiveness for myself and for others. And when you speak from that space, it's really difficult for people to pinpoint things at you, because you're not actually projecting an energy by beating around the bush. You're actually being direct, and so you're saying it how it is, and people can't really throw that back at you. They have to just kind of meet you on your vibration, and if they can't meet you at your vibration, then they kind of just dip off and fall out of alignment with your vibration. So in saying that, this all kind of ties into the whole aspect of how vulnerability is a superpower, because when you're able to express yourself from a true authentic space, when you're able to express yourself fully and openly without having to shove yourself in or dim yourself down or lower your volume or say it a certain way so that people don't get triggered. Another thing you have to understand, triggers come from within people themselves. So if I'm triggered, that's coming from inside me. I should be dealing with that. If somebody else is triggered, that's coming from within them, and they need to deal with that. And people often project their triggers onto other people so that they don't have to deal with it. That's their way of getting rid of it. Or they distract themselves with other things, watching television, going out, partying, doing things, drinking, whatever it is to distract themselves. But if you can really understand that when you're being vulnerable, whether people understand it or not, whether people are going to hurt you, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's your way of realizing that it's a superpower for you to be able to express yourself. Because when you repress yourself, you end up getting sick, you end up feeling low on energy, you start to suck at your own supply of energy. It's kind of like when we build muscle, and then if we don't eat for days on days on days, then your body starts to utilize the energy from those muscles, and your muscles begin to decline. Your body starts to take from wherever it can to keep you going. And so it's the same sort of thing when it comes to being vulnerable. If you're not expressing yourself, if you're not being straight up, if you're not being straight out and authentic about how you feel, eventually your soul starts to feel suffocated. It starts to feel depressed. It starts to need deep rest from the fact that you're not actually expressing yourself fully and completely, and it starts to feel really jarred and suffocated. And so when you start to express, when you start to tell people how you really feel, even at the expense of being hurt, even at the expense of being shut down by others, at least you know you stood in your truth. At least you know you spoke upon how you felt within that moment. At least you know within yourself that you are acting out of a place of integrity, and you can be proud of yourself for that. You can feel comfortable within yourself for that, and your soul can feel like it is alive, it's being heard, it's being nourished, it's being nurtured, it's being listened to, and you're accepting it. And it's also a really, really good way of reconnecting with your inner child, because when your inner child feels like it has a voice, when your inner child feels like it's being expressed and being spoken through you, it really creates this deep, beautiful bond between you and your inner child, where you begin to start to trust yourself. A lot of the reason that we have inner child wounds is because our inner child doesn't trust us. It doesn't trust us to be there for it. It doesn't trust us to look after it and to protect it the way that we thought it would. When you're little, you're like, when I grow up, I'm gonna do this. When I grow up, I'm gonna do that. And then when you grow up, you're still doing the same shit, right? So your inner child begins to distrust you. And when you don't trust yourself in the world, it's really, really difficult to trust other people. It's really difficult to be vulnerable. And it's really difficult to recognize that your vulnerability is not a weakness. It's actually a strength. It's a superpower. So when your inner child comes online, you begin to become way more vulnerable than you've ever been, and you begin to express yourself in different ways. You begin to be able to do things that you probably thought others would look down on. You're comfortable to go and have a swing at the park and slide down the slide. You're comfortable to act like a child when you need to, in a safe and healthy way where you're kind of, having fun with it. You're enjoying yourself. You're able to come from a space of fun, loving, and joy and imagination. That's what I mean when I say acting like a child. I don't mean throwing tantrums and having, trauma responses. I mean, having fun, really enjoying yourself, using your imagination, thinking beyond the limitations of the mind and of society, and really breaking out, breaking free. Because the childlike spirit, they're very vulnerable. They say what they need to say. They say it how it is. They're honest. They're truthful. And they don't really think about whether or not it's going to hurt somebody else, because they're coming from a very pure, positive space. And that is their superpower. It's just when parents or teachers or friends or society around them starts to tell them that it's wrong to be themselves, starts to tell them that it's wrong to be their true, authentic expression, that they then go in and sort of like start to jam up and shut down. And so it's really important to build a solid connection with your inner child by going in and healing your inner child, sitting with your inner child, reparenting your inner child, holding yourself through anything where you feel triggered, where you feel upset, where you feel traumatized, really speaking to yourself through that, being there for yourself through that, the way that your inner child thought you would when you grow up. And now that you're grown up enough to do that, it's imperative for you to realize that being vulnerable with yourself in that way, being there for yourself in that way, holding yourself is a superpower. Having your own back, having yourself, trusting yourself enough to know that no matter what life throws at you, no matter if anybody's there with you or not, no matter if anybody supports you or not, you support yourself, you trust yourself, you have your own back, and you're willing to be vulnerable, and you're willing to put your ass on the line, because you know you're here with a mission, you know you're here to do something big, and you know you're here with a purpose to help and heal other people. And the only way to do that is to be your true, authentic self, to be vulnerable, to say how you feel, to really act on that, to act on how you feel in a safe, healthy way, where it's not hurting anybody else, where it's not demeaning anybody else, where it's not making anybody else feel like shit, but you're able to just be who you are in all of your expression, your darkness, your light, your all of it, your yin and yang, your wholeness, and just be that in the world, because you're being who you really are. So there's so many different things that I want to speak about, so many different topics, and a lot of them kind of interlink and interlace within each other, and I just want to trust the process and know that it's all going to make sense when it's supposed to, for who it's supposed to, and hit at the right time. So with that said, I hope that this message helps you guys. Take care, stay blessed, stay high vibing, and I will speak to you guys in another multidimensional conversation. Bye.